The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to week 2 of K4Wins. Hope you get a chance to check out our first show. And if you did, Kai, what was our record our first week?
First week or last week?
First week or last week. I know we've done a couple shows here, but week number 1 last week.
Week number 1, we went 6-3
right.
On our picks on there, as well as 3-0 on free picks. The free picks. How about Case coming in with Hawaii plus 14 straight up winner, UNLV plus 3.5 straight up winner.
Nice.
And then we added Alabama in there, that team total in the first half over 27.5, which came through. The 6-3, the winners. We had Alabama on the spread. We had Texas team total over, it hits. We had Tennessee over their team total. It hits. We have Alabama over their team total. It hits. We had Georgia minus, 11 or, 30. Either way you wanted to go, it was a winner. We talked about that on the show, I think in June, Tony. Mm-hmm. I said Georgia was going to crush them. It might be late, but they were going to crush them. Yep. We also had Alabama, in the first half. And, of course, we did what I think the whole world did, bet against Florida State.
There you go. Yeah, and it's amazing, too, because FSU goes in that game, too, thinking, okay, well, now we have a 12-team playoff. You could lose a game and still make it, but you can't lose 2. And you can't lose to Boston College and make it in.
Not at home.
He is the sports editor for the Las Vegas Sun. Case Keefer has been doing this forever. He's the best, and he, of course, is the beat writer for the Las Vegas Raiders. We're getting to week 1 of the NFL. We'll talk about that. Kai Gregory's been handicapping for over 30 years. Good friend of mine. He knows exactly what he's been doing. I've been doing sports radio. I've been part of ESPN's crew and everything else for the last 30 as well. This is K4Wins.com. Go to the website, K4Wins.com, K4Wins.com for everything we've got in case you've missed anything. And, of course, you can watch these shows on our YouTube channels wherever you get your Tony Kurre Radio podcast. We're going to give you some more best bets. We do have some pro actions going on this weekend. You guys all lathered up and ready for some NFL action this weekend. Case, you're right down the street from the Raiders camp, man. I bet you're just chomping at the bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in the South around where you guys are now. So I guess college football is probably my first love, but over the years become more of an NFL guy, especially with the Raiders here. And I'm so excited for week 1. And frankly, NFL betting has been better for me than college football the last several years, at least. It wasn't always that way. So, really excited for NFL week 1. And I've just been to so many of these practices. I'm so sick of practice, so sick of drills. I'm ready for the Raiders.
You're ready to hit somebody too. You're ready to hit somebody different too, aren't you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Kai, I know you love the NFL as well. Do you have a luster on which direction you like? For me, the NFL is just heartbreak city, man. I mean, I'm sitting there watching the Red Zone every week, and I know they have the bewitching hour, and I'm thinking there's no way in hell this game's going to backdoor when they're down by 17 with 3 minutes left, and it happens every single week in the National Football League. You can't turn it off.
No, I prefer college, absolutely. We had Baltimore last night. I feel like it was the right side. It's amazing. Case, now we're talking about how many times Baltimore got called for the exact same situation or exact same lineup that Kansas City was doing, but Baltimore got called for it, and then, a missed field goal. And then, you want to talk about losing by a toe, on the last play. Good grief. But, good game last night. You got Philly and the Packers today in, where are they? Brazil?
Sao Paulo. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's crazy. Both college football and pro football. I know you had your game last night, but opening weekends, in a different country. So I think that adds to it. We're trying to get some things going. And, I like college a lot better, but the NFL, I like to call it the National Fixed League, like you're talking about, that 17-point, something backdoor there. Thought we were going to get it last night, but I guess the powers that be were on Kansas City.
Executive Director of the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, Kip Keefer, will join us later on the show. He is actually in Las Vegas, going out there to do a little party for his grandson. So we're looking forward to that. And I know, Case, you're looking forward to this as well. He'll join us in the show with his big plays, his best bets coming up in a few minutes. Biggest game in college this weekend, number 4 against number 10, Texas and Michigan. Want to get your guys' thoughts on that, and do you have a play on it? Case?
I hate to say it, it might be this way a lot with the marquee games. I don't have a play on it. I am really looking forward to it. It's just there's a lot more money, a lot more scrutiny on these big games. I feel like that this time of the week, the lines are really likely to be beaten into place. I do, I've had the whole week to think about it, break it down. I think I picked, it was just a guess of in my column where I pick every game on Texas. I still think it's 7 or less. I would probably lean Texas. It's just tough when this line sat much low. I mean, at least 4 points lower all summer.
Yep.
So we're reacting a lot to the week one results. But, at this time of the year, it's kind of art versus science. I think later in the year, I'm a stronger numbers guy. If my numbers say this is the play, I'm going to play it. You kind of got to think, okay, are we overreacting to Michigan's offensive struggles against Fresno State, or is there something also there? And I kind of combined what they did against Fresno State with the reports we were getting out of the summer that the offense was really rough. We saw the future markets move against Michigan really strongly. So it wasn't like this was out of nowhere. I'm sure they were saving some stuff for Texas. I'm sure they'll have a better game plan, and the touchdowns a heavy number to lay in a venue like that. But I am really worried about their offense. I don't necessarily love Texas either, but I think you got to upgrade them after week one. I was a little bullish on Colorado State, not in that game. I think they're an okay opponent, and they let them do absolutely nothing. And to me, the new receivers get a big check mark. They look really good for the Longhorns. That was my biggest concern. I think receiver continuity is something that's really predictive in college football. And they lost two first or second round guys in the NFL draft. You saw Xavier Worthy score twice last night. So I'm still worried about their receivers, which makes me not necessarily want to lay a touchdown on the road. Maybe if this touched 6.5 again, just since it's a big game and I'll probably be watching the end, I would lean Texas, especially if it gets back to 6.5, but no play right now.
Michigan, 14 guys that get drafted into, of course, the draft, and then another 11 players transfer after, of course, Harbaugh leaves, and Sherrone Moore doing a pretty nice job so far in his first year. But yeah, I looked at that game and I liked Michigan. I was going against the trend there, but I liked Michigan's total over, and obviously didn't get there. But Fresno State, not a bad football team, 9-4 last year, and of course they got a lot coming back this particular year. Not really surprising they got close to being inside that number 10-3 at halftime. Kind of a strange game, but what's your thoughts on this big ball game this weekend? And if you're Quentin Ewers and you're wanting to win a Heisman Trophy, this is where you start.
Absolutely. One of the issues that I'm really interested in is to see, it just came out recently that Sherrone has not signed his contract. Mm-hmm. He is coaching without a contract. True. I'm interested to see, because that just kind of came out, and there's been talk about it. Are the Michigan players looking at that? Does it have any impact? Maybe, maybe not. 18 to 22-year-olds, who knows? They're all getting their NIL deal, so do they even care about their coach anymore the way it used to be? I don't know. I'm interested in that. I agree with Case. 7 is a number that you look at. 7.5, you don't want to do it. I agree with the 6.5. It could land on 7. Honestly, I think Texas wins by 2 touchdowns. I have zero respect for Michigan. I never liked Harbaugh anyway. I get that they won last year. Everything's set up beautifully. They lost all kinds of people. I would bet Texas up to 10 personally, but that's a personal opinion. Everybody has opinions, right?
We can only hope that it's as good as the only other time these two teams played, where it's a 38-37 ball game. Should be a fantastic ball game. And again, you just kind of hope the defending champs are defending champs until they lose. And we'll see what the Michigan Wolverines are going to do. And again, Texas, a team that I believe Case Keefer had winning a national title last year. And of course, we had you on the show. And we're like, okay, if they're going to win a national title, they're going to have to knock off that Alabama team in the third week of the season. And what happened? They knocked off Alabama in T-Town. So pretty nice, but you were close. You were within a hair, man. You're right there.
Yeah, I liked them in that Alabama game a lot too, and I'd still make that bet again. I think it was right when the numbers opened last year. I bet them 30-1, and if you give me a 30-1 to make the Final Four, I guess now the format's a little different. I'll take that every time. But yeah, I'm a little not as high on them this year. But hey, I could be wrong. They look great week one.
All right, give us some best bets, and then I want to talk some pro action. Kai, give me a couple things that are really sticking out to you this weekend.
I really am going to like Tennessee in the first half against NC State, and I really like Tennessee over their team total. Now, it's been very obvious that I'm a Tennessee fan. I don't like the way NC State started last week. Josh Heupel, generally speaking, now more at home, but everywhere they start fast, so I really like them in the first half. NC State started very slow last week. I don't think you can put anything on what Tennessee did to the Mocs last week. I mean, UT Chattanooga, who really cares? But looking at some of that, I also like Alabama. I like them in the first half. I like their team total over in the first half. I like them for the game. I think Milroe's going to come back in. He's got something to prove against the team that he, almost lost his job against last year, but he stood there and clapped on the sideline the whole time. Yeah. I am not an Alabama fan in any shape, form, or fashion, but I like them. And I'm really interested to see the Auburn Cal, especially now that line's dropped to 12. Saw that this morning. I see a lot of people on Cal when it was 14 and a half. You understand that, that line dropping to 12. There's a lot of things in there. I like Syracuse and Georgia Tech to score a lot of points. I really do. The way those offenses have played. Just going through a few more, by the way, an interesting stat in the Auburn-Cal game, one of the wide receivers for Auburn was the starting quarterback at Cal last year. Mm-hmm. So that's in there. I like Oregon and Boise State to go over their total. I can't believe it's only 61.5 even now. I really thought that total should be way, way, way higher. All of these are probably going to end up being plays this week. And also, Jacksonville State, after that loss, how are they going to stay within 5 touchdowns of Louisville? I mean, the line's at 30. They got crushed by a Coastal Carolina team at Jacksonville State that I do not think is anywhere near as good as Louisville. I may be crazy. But that's some of the games that I like this week. There's about 10 more, and we'll see how many plays we post on K4Wins on either side, free plays or not. I like the 3 free play format, and looking forward to that this weekend.
Yeah, that Oregon game, really interesting. Obviously had a tough time with the Vandals of Idaho, and that was a game that was like a real head scratcher for a lot of folks at Oregon. And of course, the quarterback there, 41 of 49, put up some huge numbers, but just did not transfer, and actually a 2-1 advantage when it came to yardage, but just didn't get to the end zone when they needed to. And they got Boise State, who can honestly put some points up. I love that over 60. I think I saw it 60.5, 61 as well. But lots of good plays there. Case, so what's shutting out to you right now?
Yeah, that's that was a bizarre game. Just seemed like Oregon didn't finish some drives. I do expect a better effort. I actually don't have anything on that game either. I would agree with you guys. My first lean was the over. There's been some weird resistance there, so I'm not sure I'll get involved. I will say, I know this is something I harp every week, and people are probably sick of hearing me say it, but I think this week especially, I matched with Kai on the first 2 games. He said I bet both those sides, but I will say if number one thing, if you want to get better betting, is I recommend betting earlier, trying to get to know the markets and pick off these bad numbers. Because if we were having this conversation 3 or 4 days ago, there's 2 bets I bet the biggest this week, and one of them's the first one Kai mentioned. I bet Tennessee -6.5 at open here, which I thought was just a horrendous number. Anything can happen one game. Who knows? But I mean, you look at Tennessee and NC State. I mean, the Volunteers have them outmatched at every position. It reminds me a lot, from a talent perspective, of probably Georgia Clemson this last week. Now who knows that young quarterback in his first start on the road. I know there's always crazy things that can happen, but even on Kip's show, the starting lineup, I know which airs tomorrow before the games, they were still 7.5. I said that was good, but I said it should be 10. Now it's 10. It's really hard to kind of recommend it at 10. I still would lean Tennessee. I feel like the Volunteers should be good here, but it's a testament to betting early in the week there. I matched on Alabama too. I think that with the new coaching staff in place, they're going to want to cover these big numbers. I saw Brent McMurphy had an interesting tweet earlier this, the Ultimate College Football Insider, at the beginning of the season. Someone said 98% of the coaches know the point spread in this day and age. He said, take the over. He's the Ultimate College Football Insider. He would know. I think these guys that come to a new job, they have some added pressure to make the boosters some coin. And I think that Alabama's probably going to take no prisoners here. I'm not as high on South Florida, despite what they did to Alabama last year. So I think I bet that 30.5, which I still see on the board here available a couple places. So I like that one as well. As far as things I'll throw in there, sorry, I wanted to respond to Kai's. Both these have kind of moved against me, but this goes with the Friday thing of, I kind of lose some confidence when I see the market going the other way, but I like Syracuse a lot in the game. Kai kind of mentioned, I just felt, look, they opened with Ohio, like a soft opener. I'm sure they didn't show anything. Their offense looked great with Kyle McCord. I think you downgrade Georgia Tech a little bit they really struggled with Georgia State despite ending up covering. They had to have a goal line stand to do that. This is their 3rd straight game. Florida State, we saw what they looked like in week 2. So was that win really all that much? Fran Brown at Syracuse, former Georgia assistant. He knows Georgia Tech well. I bet +3.5. It's still +3 everywhere. I think +3 is fine. I like Syracuse there. I like Baylor a little bit going to Utah. Looks like that's bounced back up to 14.5. It was 14 earlier. So anything over 14, I think Baylor is kind of a buy low team for me this year. And I feel like Utah, really good, probably should be the Big 12 favorite, but a little overhyped. They're playing new teams too. So I think you got to see how they respond in the Big 12. And last one, I'll throw out some money against me today on this one for sure. But I like East Carolina going to Old Dominion. The Monarchs getting a lot of respect for what they did against South Carolina last week. And I do think they're a good team, probably a little undervalued by the market. But East Carolina has they might have some NFL dudes on the defensive line. They have one of the group of five's best defensive lines. They're running a new offense that's more up-tempo, which means more chances to extend their talent advantage. They have Jake Garcia, the former Miami quarterback, in. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing necessarily, because he can get careless with the ball, but he's also explosive and can make some big plays. So kind of surprised to see the money coming back on Old Dominion today. I like East Carolina as an underdog.
Very good.
Well, we threw out before the year the under on South Carolina wins. So I'm just going to say, just like we threw out the over on Vandy, hey, props out to Vandy to win last week. Over 3, they're looking really good to get to 4 now, maybe more. But nothing sucks like a cock. So South Carolina, I do not think is very good. I love the play, though, on East Carolina. Way too much respect being given to Old Dominion.
There you have it. I'm going to go to the Sun Belt of all places because they've got this thing called Paint the Town Red Weekend in Jonesboro. Butch Jones' squad, Arkansas State, the Red Wolves are going to have them up against it. Had a really weird game this past week, and I love games out of the Sun Belt, some of these smaller leagues, because that's what I study and look at. They had a tough time against Central Arkansas, almost losing that football game, but they got a great offense. They're averaging 34 points a ball game their last 6. If you go back to last season, they got 10 guys back on offense, and I think they're going to paint the town red. And I think they're going to do it against a Tulsa squad. Kevin Wilson's already said, listen, I'm not NIL. I'm not doing NIL. I didn't get hired to do NIL. And we're seeing how that's working out for Dabo Sweeney. So right now, I think Tulsa coming up a 4-8 season is rough. I don't really like the hook there, but I think Arkansas State bounces back. And I don't think they showed anything. In week 1. I think they have to open it up a little bit. And I think they're going to get well beyond the 7.5 and probably win by double digits. Game, I want you to get thoughts. And in case I want you to get your thoughts on this too, because you're a guy who could be known as having inside information because you're in the locker room, you're with the Raiders organization. The UAB Blazers are going to play University of La Monroe this weekend. They're favored by 13.5. By the way, the last 7 years since they came back to play football in 2017, they're 1-6 in game 2s the last 7 seasons. They suck in game 2s and all those games on the road. Yet here they are favored by 13.5, and they're going to play this guy named Bryant Vincent, who of course was in Trent Dilfer's office before Trent Dilfer was there. Trent was, we did a show with him this past week called The Inferno. You can hear on Tony Kurre Radio, wherever you get your favorite podcast. He had his job in his back pocket, Brian Vincent did. Trent Dilfer comes in, takes his gig, and they're both in the same office for 3 weeks. Tell me how uncomfortable that must have been. And then after, of course, Bryant gets puffed out. He goes to New Mexico. They burnt the house down. Trent said, man, I know what Brian's all about. He's been at UAB for 5 years. They changed the paywalls. They changed the cable. They changed everything. They blew out every single computer they had. He said he's the OC. He knows everything about this program. We do not need to know exactly what his mind's up to when it comes to looking at the UAB Blazers because he's got such an inside thing. And here he is coming into a program like, for sure, ULM has got to be one of the worst football teams in college football, certainly last year and this year again. They've only got 1 guy coming back on offense. I think they got 3 coming back on defense. But he took 18 administrators, coaches, and players from the UAB Blazers when he went to ULM. He also took a lot of players from New Mexico because he had to build that program up. When you're playing a guy from the inside that obviously knows your program really well, what advantages and disadvantages do you have? Then I got to play in this game.
Yeah, well, to me, it really becomes a leveling battle. I will say it was interesting when you teased we were going to talk about UAB. Like 5 minutes later, the screen lit up. They're now down to an 11-point favorite. Some UL Monroe money came in, which maybe we should have chatted before because I bet the Blazers minus 12 in this game. And to me, it's more about just UL Monroe. I mean, most sets of power ratings you look, I had them as the worst team in FBS coming into the year. Last week, there was big steam on Jackson State. I think they might have closed the favorite in that game against the FCS opponent. UL Monroe did take care of business, blew them out 30-14, I believe. But yeah, I think you make some good points, especially if Vincent. I know he's a respected guy, so maybe they're better than. They're a little bit ahead of schedule. I mean, there's nowhere really to go but up. And it's always kind of, you can take it both ways when you have this information like this, a coach that had been at the last school. I know if they win and roll, that's going to be a big talking point. I know he knew it like the back of his hand. But then, it can also flip the other way where if UAB takes care of business here, it's going to be like, well, we knew what he knew, so we could switch up our playbook, do things differently. So unless I have, really, and you probably do, being close to the program, have like a really good feeling on who it's going to benefit. I try not to get tied up on those things. I just thought UAB here had the much better roster. But hey, the Friday moves are usually pretty predictive, and there is money flowing in on UL Monroe right now.
The one thing that I loved about UAB game last year, and obviously they scored 37 points a ball game. Their defense was not good, and we know that. And the over hit 9 out of the 12 games, and they hit, I think, the over on almost every home game. And I love that. I love watching overs at home games. But I'm going to go over there 54.5. Listen, they only gave up 3 points this past week, and I know that everyone's painting, oh my gosh, the defense is so much better. It's not that much better over one year for Trent Dilfer. It will get better, and it has to get better. But they were playing, of course, a SWAC team. And I don't put a lot of credence in the fact that they only scored 3 points against the UAB Blazers. And of course, you get the former OC at UAB, now at ULM. He loves to sling the football. He said, listen, we may not win a football game, but this is going to be a fun team to watch. That means they're going to put some points up. So I'm going to take the over 54.5 in that UAB game against ULM this weekend. The other game I think is interesting, and I love to see what happens to teams after they have really close games. You guys mentioned Oregon and Boise State. I want to see what Notre Dame does this weekend against the Northern Illinois squad out of the MAC, who a lot of people thought was maybe the second or third best team in the MAC, and they're catching 28 points. Now, I know Notre Dame's got a stout defense. I know they're fantastic. We saw what they did against A&M. That was one of the worst games to watch in the world, by the way. It was 6-6 around halftime. Not a fun game to watch. And Notre Dame gets an impressive win against A&M. But I really think that line at 28 or 28.5 is too big for Northern Illinois. I can see where Notre Dame, and they got Purdue, certainly not a game they're going to be looking forward to because Purdue's not that good either. But it's a Big Ten foe, and I can't help but think they're going to be just flying through this game and sleepwalking through this thing. And probably inside 28 is probably going to be pretty good. So we'll see what happens. But those are the three right now. Arkansas State, I like. And I'll be honest with you, there are so many games to look at. And week 0, there was nothing. And when you're forced to look at games, you can go paralysis by analysis, man. And you just keep trying to find plays. And sometimes there's just nothing out there. And this was one of those weekends where I looked at everything 2 or 3 times. And every time I felt like I had a play, there was something that threw me off. So those are the 3 things I really like. We do have pro action, though, before we check out Kip's plays here in just a second. Talk about what's going on with those Las Vegas Raiders since you're on the inside, and anything particularly looking good this weekend.
Yeah, can't wait for the NFL to kick off. The Raiders, 3-point underdog at the Chargers. All summer, I would have told you I love the Chargers in the spot, and I still certainly lean that way. I like the Chargers. The Raiders, they're going to have a really good defense this year. They're kind of defense first, but from being up close, I can tell you the offense just looks like it has a long way to go. They hired Luke Getsy, the former Bears coordinator, who didn't exactly get a lot of plaudits for the job he did in Chicago. And that they wanted to draft a quarterback. Ultimately, one wasn't there where they picked. They weren't willing to mortgage the whole future to move up. So they were stuck with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Gardner Minshew wins the job, which I think, as far as them being good, what was the better result? I think Gardner Minshew's honestly kind of a little underrated. He's played serviceable his whole career, he's usually a gamer. So I guess if you're making a bullish Raiders case, you can say this practice, all the interceptions he's throwing, the chemistry doesn't matter because he shows up when it's game day. I'm worried about the Chargers just because they have the worst set of skill players in the NFL. But I trust Jim Harbaugh a little bit more than Antonio Pierce at this point. I think they might just line up and run it at him. So I would lean the Chargers, but that's going to be a really low-scoring game. I bet under 43 about a month ago. I think it's 41.5 now. Maybe 41.5 still worth a stab. But just talking about this so much because I know the Raiders well. Obviously, some games I guess I do like. I like Buffalo. Now back to 6.5. So we're not getting the best number, but I still think less than a touchdown. I would lay it with Buffalo. Arizona's defense, it looks like it's going to be real rough. And I'm not as down on Buffalo as everyone else. It seems like it kind of reminds me of Kansas City 2 years ago where they lost a bunch of skill guys and everyone's like, oh, sell on the Chiefs. They're not going to be good this year. I bet them 12-1 to win the Super Bowl, which will never happen again, probably until Mahomes turns 40. Now the Bills lose Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, who neither played really that well last year. And everyone's, what are they going to do to recover from this? Give me Josh Allen and some young weapons he has now. So I like Buffalo minus 6.5 in that game. I have thoughts on every one of these games. So if there's any of you guys are interested on,
go for it, man. Go for it.
I could throw it out there, but I really like that one. And we might be oppo on this one. I know you're high on the Bears, and it has gotten beat down a little bit, but I like the Titans plus 3.5, 4.5. I think I bet earlier in the week. These teams just look pretty even to me. And I know people down on the Titans, but they put a lot of money into free agency. They got some guys that can play. I don't think getting an extra hook there against, as good as Caleb Williams is, a rookie quarterback. generally early in the season, I like to bet against these rookie quarterbacks, with one exception, I guess, this week. This will be the final game. Like I said, I have opinions on every game, but I kind of like Denver going to Seattle. Only because they're such a big underdog, and I don't necessarily know that I love the Seahawks hype. I think they're kind of lacking that top end talent. They made a great hire with Coach McDonald coming over from being Baltimore's DC, but I mean, he's been beaten down to like 10-1 in the Coach of the Year market. I'm seeing people saying that they're going to unseat the 49ers to the NFC West. Well, look at the roster quality. I mean, the 49ers roster is still ridiculous, which brings me to Monday Night Football, where I'd lay the 4 with them against the Jets. I think all the contract stuff kind of seeped into the market, and I need to see Aaron Rodgers off this Achilles injury before I'm calling for him to win the Super Bowl. So that's just a few things I'm on.
Guy, week 1 kicked off, of course, last night. We cooked it off. We had Baltimore, and of course, they had every shot to win that ball game, but they didn't. Who do you like this weekend?
There's some interesting lines that I'm just not sure about yet. That Tennessee-Chicago line moving. I'm a Volunteers fan. I'm a Titans fan. I'm going to be interested. I probably won't touch the game. If I did, yeah, I don't know. If it ever drops below 3, I'd play Chicago. If it's above 3, you take Tennessee. I don't like it where it is right now. I don't understand how New England and Cincy's not going to win by 10, being an 8.5 point favorite. You can get anywhere from 8 to 9, I still think. Houston -3 at Indy interests me, and Dallas and Cleveland interests me. Cleveland's still laying 2.5, I think. I don't think it's any higher. That one, those interest me. Of course, some interest in the game tonight on that side. Some totals are going to be interesting, but I will point out one thing, Tony, as a Tennessee fan, I lost tons and tons and tons of money on Butch Jones when he was in Tennessee, and I've made tons and tons and tons of money betting against Butch Jones since he left Tennessee. One of the worst coaches in the history of college football.
And that's probably why he's
ever had worse than him was Jeremy Pruitt.
I was waiting for you to say something about Butch Jones. That's why I threw his name back.
I didn't want to interrupt, but you could not pay me. You could not give me $100 bill and say, please bet this on a Butch Jones coach team, because the only person that might be worse in tough situations is Cristobal and that farce they had against Georgia Tech last year, running the ball when all they had to do was down it and ended up losing the game. Now he's come back better this year, but I hate to get away from the NFL and go back to college. I would never, ever, ever, ever encourage anyone to bet on anything Butch Jones has any hand in.
The NFL is so hard to handicap, and normally towards the end of the years when you kind of see the lines really get out of whack because you're resting players. Some players have already mailed it in. You're going for first round draft picks, but that Cincinnati Bengals 8.5 is the largest line this weekend. And I can't believe that the actual Bengals actually have it. I got a good friend of mine, Steve Delata, who's actually the beat writer for the Cincinnati Enquirer that works really close with that football team. He has told me that inside their locker room, they want to blow out New England. The fact that Bill Belichick's not there anymore, that football team has got, I don't even know where you get started. Their draft, from everything from the draft to losing their head coach to one of the greatest coaches of all time. And the Bengals have an opportunity here. Finally, for the first time in his career, he spent the entire training camp healthy, and it looks like Joe Burrow is ready to light it on fire. The offensive line is healthy. Everyone's healthy. The only reason they got any problems right now is because T. Higgins doesn't have a contract, and Jamar Chase is still waiting on his as well. He's going to get it. They just don't have money to sign both. But as of right now, everyone's saying with a 10.5, I took the over 10.5 in total wins. Everyone's saying if the Bengals are ever going to win a Super Bowl, and they've been to 2 of them, 3 of them, and they haven't done squat, if they're ever going to win, this is the year they got to get it done. If they stay healthy, they should win 13 ball games. And these are the kind of games where they need to blow these teams out. I would probably take the Bengals -8.5. I like them to win by 10 to 14 points this week in the National Football League. I'm just going to sit back. The NFL is one of those leagues where I have to look at a couple of games first before I jump in, man, because it's just amazing how tight and how close it is. And as the season goes, it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. It's really amazing. It really is. All right, let's go to Kip Keefer for his plays here. This is the K4Wins.com show, K4Wins.com for all of our plays, 6-3 in our first week, K4Wins.com. Check out our website, and here's Kip with his plays
Thanks, Tony. I'm playing hooky today, and I apologize. I'm sure the discussion with today's 3Ks was very interesting, but I wanted to throw my 2 cents in so I could be included in the action. Coming off probably my best pick on the show, which I told you that I didn't think both teams coming back from Ireland last week would cover big numbers. And I kind of told you on our last broadcast that if Georgia Tech manages to cover, make a small bet on Georgia State, take the points. But if Georgia Tech happened to cover, go all in, mortgage the house, sell the cars, put it all on Boston College. And there's not many things that you can consider a laugher in this business, but my goodness, Boston College pulverized Florida State as a 16.5-point underdog. They won by 15. They almost covered in the opposite direction, the spread. So I didn't want to step down and miss the show completely. I've got 3 plays for you on the starting lineup that airs on Saturday morning, 10:30 on ABC 3340. I said on the air to Tony that I really don't like giving up big points in terms of a favorite, but I really am convinced that Oklahoma is going to roll over Houston today. The Boomer Sooners, just a better team, of course. Houston in transition. They don't have much back from their previous couple of years where they had a respectable team, last year being their Big 12 debut, and a new coach, Willie Fritz, coming from Tulane. Excellent coach, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time. And the other compelling evidence is that Houston got clobbered by UNLV last week at home. Not a good sign going to Norman, Oklahoma on top of that. Oklahoma just slaughtered Temple. I won't say Temple and Houston are comparable. Houston's definitely a step up, but that score was 60 some odd to 3. I expect like a 45-10 kind of game. So I will take Oklahoma and give up the 29 points and sweat profusely as that game's going on. Another game, the game that's on ABC 3340 right after the starting lineup, Arkansas and Oklahoma State. I guess because Arkansas put up 70 against Pine Bluff, and Oklahoma had a pretty good scoring output in their game, Oklahoma State, I should say. I guess they think this is going to be a shootout. I don't think so. I think this will be one of those games where both teams kind of feel themselves out. It's a big power versus power conference game, SEC against the Big 12. I look for this to be one of those games that looks like they have some explosiveness, but I think about halfway through the second quarter, you're going to look up and it's going to be like 10-6. And if you bet over, you're going to be going, oh my gosh, we're not even in the neighborhood. They've set the number here at 63. I think that's outrageous. I think that's going to be just a kind of a regular scoring pace game, somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 30-17. So I think it's going to go way under. So the bet on this game, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, is under. I had one more on my list. This is a strange team. This is the first SEC conference game of the year. So this one counts in the SEC standings. Nobody else plays their first SEC game till next week. This will be the only one on the books because no SEC teams played each other in week 1. This one is South Carolina at Kentucky. Kentucky in a game that was really a mess last week because they kept having thunderstorms and having delays. I think they finally just pulled the plug on it about midway through the fourth quarter. Kentucky was up 31-0, but Southern Miss, who used to be kind of a giant killer, they've just gotten worse as the years have gone on, and not a good program now. I'm not terribly impressed. I don't know what Kentucky's really going to be this year. They have a Georgia transfer quarterback, Brock Vandergriff, at the controls, but he hasn't played a lot of football in his career. He's done a lot of clipboard carrying on the sidelines for the Bulldogs. So let's see what happens. And Shane Beamer's team did not look good in week 1. I loved Old Dominion at South Carolina last week. They were getting like 15 points. They covered easily. South Carolina did not look good, but they've got the best player on the field, Arkansas transfer Rocket Sanders, and he's the kind of back that can kind of take over a game. South Carolina's getting 10 points. Shane Beamer's MO is to kind of come off the mat right when you think the Gamecocks are dead in the water and bite somebody. Remember a couple of years ago, they completely eliminated Tennessee and Clemson in back-to-back weeks from the college football playoff by knocking them both off as huge underdogs and preventing them from even being in the discussion. I don't know if they'll win outright, but I think 10 points in an SEC game is very generous. So give me the Gamecocks. Go Shane Beamer. I'm going to take the 10 and South Carolina. I know the other guys gave you some great information. It's going to be a fantastic football Saturday. I'm going to spend it in Las Vegas. So let me at them. I'm going to be at the windows and see what we can do to produce a little revenue to bring home to Alabama first of next week. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate your support of our brand new show, and just wanted to weigh in today and give you a couple picks. This is Kip Keefer. Have a fantastic football weekend, everybody.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.